welcome all of you to our webinar today, which is Techniques to Make the Contact Center More Powerful, which I think is going to be an absolute cracking webinar and one a lot of people have got a lot of interest in. So I'd like to introduce to you all of our speakers. So Marcus, delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, and you're going to be taking us through some insights into today's and tomorrow's contact centers.
That's right, yes. We're looking at some survey work we've done with 50 IT decision makers who support contact centers, and also research we've done with 500 consumers to look at some of the sort of trends in contact center behaviors and desires that customers want.
Yeah, and how recent is that research?
So it's very recent, just done this year, so very up to date.
Fabulous.
So I'll be interested to see some of the results from the polls that you have during the webinar to see how they compare with what we found.
Wonderful. And we're going to be taking some top tips and questions from you in the audience, which will be great. So if you want to log into the chat room to leave those, and if you type hashtag tip for a tip and hashtag question for a question, and we've got a number of people who have left messages in the chat room while you're logging in. Dan is dialing in from Kent. We've got Angela dialing in from Northwest England, and Claude dialing in from Cwmbran in Wales. So quite a variety of different people calling in. We've also got Simon Beeching with Syntek. And Simon, you're going to be taking us through how technology can play an interesting part within the contact center.
That's right, Jonty. Very much building on the theme you mentioned earlier of customer service, the empowered customer of today, and how technology can help organizations keep up and match their customer satisfaction expectations.
Wonderful. I think it's going to be very interesting to see that and see some of the suggestions you've got for that. And also delighted to be joined by Colin Westlake, who's calling in from San Jose in California. Colin, good morning to you.
Jonty, hi. So
what time in the morning is it across with you?
I'm afraid it's 5 a.m., so it's rather dark out here.
Okay, well, I appreciate your dedication in getting up so early to come and join us for the webinar. And Colin's also going to be joining our panel answering the questions from the audience. Welcome to you, Colin. If you're not already logged into the chat room, callcenterhelper.com/chat, and you can leave your tips and questions. We've got Jeanette from County Durham, Jamie from Sittingbourne, Teresa from Halifax, Chantel from Nottingham, all logged in. So you can win a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates if you come up with the best tip, if you just hashtag tip in front of that. And I've asked Marcus immediately after the webinar if you'd be so kind as to choose the winning tip.
Thank you. I look forward to that.
And then we'll be announcing those results on Twitter within the hour of the webinar finishing. There's also a white paper that's coming out to you from Syntek, which contains details of yours and Marcus's research.
Well, that's right, Jonty. Yes, David Hickman were asked by us to do this research. It's entitled Cloud Gazing, the Future of Contact Center Technology, which is the headlines of which Marcus is going to present to us in a minute.
Wonderful. So if you'd like to log into the chat room, callcenterhelper.com/chat. If you haven't caught it already, to get the webinar slides, and we are going through a lot of detail, once you're logged in, it's this little link on the top of the slide, download webinar slides, which should be good. So I want to put up a poll and just like to ask the question of you, what do you think will happen to call volumes or contact volumes in the next 12 months? Do you expect a big rise? Do you expect a small rise in volumes? Do you expect it to be about the same? Do you expect a small fall, or do you expect it to be a large fall? So if you'd just like to have a look at those details, would be good to see. So we've got quite a number of people voting. Just wait for the last couple of ones there. Any predictions, Marcus, on what you think is happening? Is it linked to the state of the economy, do you think?
I'm going to guess small rise, but I could well be wrong. I think we've got consumers being more advocates, people making more complaints. I think the economy's picking up a little bit, so more transactions. That's my tip.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the results here. So we've got 22% with a big rise, 32% with a small rise, 28% about the same, 18% with a small fall, and none expecting a large fall in call volume. So I think that ties in with sort of consensus of a rising volume. Sam, do you think this is sort of linked to the state of the economy, or just?
I think it's probably less linked to the state of the economy. Just there's more ways that people can get in contact now, and I think that's the issue that organisations have to deal with. There's so many different ways and more immediate ways that people can get in contact now, and that's what the new generation of technology is allowing people to do, and that we have to react to.
And I think it's creating some demand problems on contact centres. Some research came out earlier in the week that showed that call waiting times have gone up 27% in the past year. So I think that's, if there's more call volume, it's still constraining ourselves in terms of headcount. That can cause a slight imbalance. So, so that was great. What I'd like to also do is just get everyone logged into the chat room now, and I'd like to ask the question of you, which is, what is the next project that you're planning to introduce into your contact center? So if you'd just like to put the details in, what is the next project you're planning on introducing into your contact center? So it'd be interesting whether it's a new channel or a new staff initiative. Just be quite fascinating to see that. So you've got a number of people typing in. Teresa said we're planning to introduce face-to-face live chat via webcam, which is quite interesting. Jill says home agents. Jamie has said cloud-based voice over IP. Mike said webcam. Ian at web chat. Leah said they're planning to bring SIP or SIP into the contact center. And it's quite interesting. We've got an article this week looking at when ISDN might be phased out, amongst other things. Web chat says Chantel. PCI DSS compliance says Danny. And Matt is going for a paperless office with all paper-based documents online. Alex says our contact center used to be mainly an inbound, but we're moving to more of an outbound-based department and bringing an SMS system to contact customers, and Kathleen's looking at universal call routing. So quite a range of different different things there. So that's some of tomorrow, but let's come back to have a look at today's insights and where that's likely to lead into tomorrow, and got some empiric evidence based on this, which I think is going to be fascinating to see. So I'm just going to pass the baton now across to Marcus Hickman from Davis Hickman Partners, and if you could take us through your thoughts, Marcus.
Okay, thank you, John T, for that introduction. So I want to start by saying, I mean, if we think back 15 years ago, a lot of CEOs were asking whether they needed call centers anymore, having probably just invested in one. But today, the most technologically advanced call centers are those supporting e-commerce businesses. They were always supposed to be the self-service ones, weren't they? They were the ones that were supposed to rely on internet self-service. There'd be no need for the phone. But if you think about Amazon with its Mayday video chat, or eBay with its smart service and its constant sort of prompting, etc., or even ASOS with its here to help, which I think when I last looked at it, they've responded to 399,000 tweets to date. You can see how the industry has morphed continually since Direct Line effectively set it all up for us with their little red phone, if you can remember back then. So this afternoon I want to talk a bit about the sort of untapped power of the contact center, because I think we're all sort of recognizing that it remains a hugely important component of any organization, but that there is more that you can do with it. And in particular, I want to look at some of the techniques that perhaps your peers, your competitors, your collaborators are using to supercharge their futures. So I've got sort of 5 techniques I wanted to look at today. The first one is running multi-channel service, and now that is a core part of many organizations' strategies. And I think it recognizes the fact that, we've got Twitter, we've got people using Instagram, we've got Facebook, we've got web chat, we've got apps, we've got text, we've got calls, etc. There are so many different ways that consumers want to interact with organizations that we're having to make multi-channel much more a component of what we do in our call centers. The second one, exploring video. I think it's interesting, John T, that in the poll there, quite a few people suggested video as something, FaceTime, something that they were looking at. And I think more and more organizations are exploring video in particular, we recognize the fact that online self-service channels can only do so much, and people do need help. And video chat is something which is really quite interesting to organizations. And for consumers, it's particularly interesting when it's a one-way camera. So, they can see the agent, but the agent can't necessarily see them. And just one other I think anecdote perhaps is just the number of consumers who are now searching for products and services using YouTube rather than Google. So they're doing a visual search rather than a text-based search. The third one is responding to fluctuating demand. Despite workforce management tools, complex forecasting models and planning teams, contact centers have still not got to grips with the fluctuations in call and contact demand. So it's still quite common that the phone is busy at 9 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock at lunchtime, despite some organizations trying things like home working, but that's still got room to move further in the future. And then the fourth one is agents, advisors, and let's not forget them, because they're the ones with the really difficult job. They're the ones who are taking the really complicated, difficult calls as more and more consumers do the simple things online. And they need training and development and support. And lastly, a very specific one, handling regulatory data security and privacy imperatives. So, the whole issue of, what sort of outbound calling can you do, where do you store your data, what call recordings do you need to keep the regulator or the ombudsman happy, PCI card payments. So our latest research completed independently for Syntek highlights the day-to-day challenges managers are facing, and hopefully will help you improve your operations. That's what I'm hoping we'll get out of today's webinar. So we surveyed 50 IT decision makers supporting contact centers across a range of sectors and sizes. And we also did a nationally representative sample of 500 consumers in the UK. So how do you rate your contact center today? This is the 50 IT decision makers talking about the way they perceive their contact center. And I think it's fair to say they seem to think things are going pretty well. Excellent call routing, often a bugbear of consumers. The latest technology, and interestingly 76% saying they have a customer-driven culture, which I think is quite different from 5 years ago where cost-cutting was much more of a priority. So yes, finance directors still have a BDI on budgets and lean service initiatives are widespread, but organizations are appreciating the value their contact center can deliver. But there is one small problem, and that is that when we come on to customer satisfaction, the effort doesn't seem to be paying off necessarily. The findings from the latest Institute of Customer Service research show consumers want something better, and overall they see customer service as getting worse. Now there are other surveys, people like Which have done similar work, which shows a decline in customer service. Now obviously call centers are not the only component of customer service, but one has to ask the question, what's going on, why are things going wrong? One of the things we've been talking about for a few months at Davis Hickman is the idea of the averagization of customer service, and that is that there are few brands that really stand out from the crowd. Most brands sit between 60 and 80% when it comes to customer satisfaction. There's only a few First Directs or Dem Plans or John Lewis partnerships, and then at the other end some well-known airlines and perhaps the odd government department who fall off the radar and provide a level of service which consumers rate to be poor. So putting aside employee engagement and better leadership or right first-time task force, which most call centers work on continually, how do IT and call center managers want to supercharge their call centers and improve them for the future? So here, looking at the top 3 improvements that should be made to your contact center, there's a strong emphasis on multi-channel, video chat, managing fluctuating demand, and card security. These are some of the changes your competitors and peers will be making in 2015. So I want to hand over now, Jonty, for a poll, I believe.
Yeah, we're just going to jump to a poll now. And the poll is going to be, what are the most wanted improvements that you would like to make in your contact center? So we'll just get the poll up on the screen for you now. So the options are card payment security should be improved. Advisors can take calls wherever they have connection. Improved systems to meet fluctuating demand. multi-channel integration to improve customer service, or video chat with customers. So if you'd like to select the top 3 most wanted improvements in your contact center, so just like to look at the results coming through there. It'd be quite interesting to see the results on this one. So we've got about most of the people voted now. Just got about 2 more to come in. I'll just close the results and share those up on the screen. So it looks like by far the biggest winner on here is multi-channel integration. Something like 88% looking at multi-channel, 75% improved systems to meet fluctuating demand, and contact center demand can be notoriously peaky in terms of its approach. Advisors can take calls whenever they want, 39%. 33%, that's a bit worrying, that say card payment security could be improved. Simon, I know that's a sort of pet hot topic of yours.
Yeah, well, consumers as well are worried, so it's the consumer who's really pushing this as well as the regulators.
Yeah, and a small proportion, 16%, video chat with customers. So does that tie pretty nicely in with your research there, Marcus?
Well, there's some differences there, but I think that overall theme of multi-channel comes out very strongly, and I think within that the video message, although it didn't come up as the top choice in that poll, it's still in there, and organisations are starting to look at it. So yeah, I think very interesting to add that into the mix. So I guess one of the things that we've all been hearing a lot over the last 2 years is that cloud is the next big thing, along with the Internet of Things. So a lot of the techniques, the ways that you can improve the technology in your contact center, they can be cloud-based. They can also be on-premises based, etc. There's 2 ways of approaching it. But it is interesting to see here that our research ties up very much with the Gartner research, which came out recently this year, in that our survey shows that 26% already use hosted contact center technology, and a further 60% plan to in the next year. And I think it's fair to say that SMEs have been the first to adopt cloud, but now larger organizations are looking at hosted cloud services, or sometimes hybrid cloud services, I guess to benefit from the lower capex, but also from the ability to always have the sort of latest version of the technology and to update it very, very, very easily. But clearly the cloud does have a role to play there. We asked what are the top 3 benefits of new technology in the contact center, which could be either cloud or on-premise. I just want to make that point. So if you look at what IT managers said, it's very interesting again. IT decision makers supporting contact centers, so that's the sample for this survey, focus on the customer's experience, personalizing the customer experience comes out as being very important. And I think that links back to the multi-channel message we were talking about before. A key technique is supporting agents with better training through improved call recording and access to those recordings, and that means playback is much easier, calibration is much easier, and the development of agents who are at the heart of the customer experience are much easier. So I think that's something that we're seeing more and more of, that sort of ability to work with the agent, the team leader and the agent working together to improve the standard of dialogue and conversation that they have with customers. So if we're having new technology, do we need a new name for call centers? I think is something we wanted to ask call center managers in particular. And it was interesting that the customer focus theme comes out quite strongly. So we're going to see some changes to the contact center environment. Should we rename it? Should we move away from the traditional tags? But things like customer hangout, customer communications platform, customer support all came out as being popular sort of choices. So I think we need to recognize that sometimes changing the way something is branded is quite important. The one that we thought was quite good was sort of the idea of a business center, because I think that links to the idea of value, generating revenue, building customer loyalty over time. So we only had so much time this afternoon to look at the full results of our research. It's all available on syntek.co.uk. Which Simon, I'm sure, will mention a bit later on as well. But I'd like to finish with an example of a change that you could make to your systems which consumers want, and it ties in with the changing regulatory environment too. But before then, we're going to have another poll.
Okay, we're just going to do a poll. Do you take card payments by phone? So we'll just get the poll up here. So do you take card payments by phone? The answers are yes, no, or not sure. So just like to vote on that. Quite a simple simple question to go through. Do you take card payments by phone? So let's look at the results that we've got there. 72% of people do indeed take card payments by phone, and 24% don't. So the vast majority of people do take them by phone. So back to you, and let's have a look at what your thoughts are on how to improve card payments.
Well, very interesting that such a large number take payments by phone.
We just got a slight glitch here. I'll just pass it back to you.
There we are. So when making card payments, which is the most secure? Now this is a question we asked of 500 consumers, so it was a nationally representative sample of online consumers, so people who buy things online, buy things by the phone, buy things in all sorts of different ways. And the question simply was, when making card payments, which is the most secure method? So chip and PIN comes out at the top, payments over a secure website 15%, and telephone payments to call center agents come out at 1%.
And this is a question you asked of consumers, not of,
so
of
we've
contact
moved
center
now
people.
from talking about the contact center managers or the IT decision makers. This is of consumers, so the people on the street. And again, that research is available on the Syntek website. And there has, in recent years, been some very high-profile scandals in the news, and I think something like over 30% of consumers have heard about these breaches from the media, according to that research we did with consumers. So there is a concern amongst consumers about the security of making payments. So we wanted to ask a sort of subsequent question of the consumers that we interviewed, which was, do you believe call centers may commit fraud? And rightly or wrongly, consumers are worried about fraud. 4 in 5 consumers think fraud occurs in call centers. From a customer's perspective, I guess it's now pretty rare that they give their card payments to an organization without some form of detailed verification. Think online or chip and PIN. Yet this is what we often expect them to do with phone payments. And if you think about the range of phone payments, whether it's for government, whether it's for holidays, whether it's tickets, whether it's just to buy something, a one-off, a washing machine, it's still a very sort of common behavior. People often research things online and then transact online or over the phone in terms of making the payment. So has the risk of fraud made you reluctant to pay over the phone? So are businesses losing revenues because they don't have a secure phone service for taking payments? And our research says that 60% say yes to that question. So they're actually not spending as much as they might do because of concerns about fraud. I'm now going to hand back to Jonty for another poll, the third that we have in this presentation.
Yeah, and that's if you take card security payments in your contact center, how do you deal with card security? So if you just like to select which one most applies to you, we don't worry about it much. We clean room the contact center, e.g. we have no paper. We pause and resume call recordings. We have keypad entry by customer, that's typically by touch-tone entry, or we tell the customer to go to the website to put the details in. So if you just like to vote on which one of those is your approach to security. If you use more than one or you've got a different way of dealing with security, if you just like to pop the answer into the chat room and we'll have a look at the answers there. I know security is a hot topic with you. Simon, which one do you think is going to come up top?
I don't think people will say they don't worry about it. I think it's a quite topical thing. I suspect that a few people might say they're doing part of the need, which is pause and resume call recordings. I think that might come out.
Well, let's have a look up. You must be reading the reflection in my glass.
No, that was a guess.
It says 39% pause and resume call recordings, 26% we clean room the contact center, 15% keypad entry by customer, 11% we tell the customer to go to the website, and only 9% don't really worry about it much.
So most people are worrying about it. I think if I could just say something there, John, interestingly, going to Marcus's research you've just been through, pause and resume call recordings, of course, falls down against what consumers want, because with pause and resume call recordings, the consumer is still being asked to give their card details to the agent. So actually, it really doesn't fit with what consumers want.
Indeed. So, Marcus, back to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jonty and Simon. So the last slide I have to present is again the 500 consumers talking about their preferences for how organizations should avoid fraud in call centers. And the top choice is use technology to hide card details from the agent. Only allow payments to it by a secure website, the second top choice. So the preference really is to completely hide the card details from the agents when it comes to what consumers think and what they want. And as I've already said, it is still a massive form of transaction, lots and lots of payments being made every day of the week to organizations all over the UK and indeed around the world. So finally, in summary, the 5 techniques that I wanted to was talking about today, which I think will empower the contact center, and I think they're things which your peers, your colleagues, your collaborators are looking at for 2015. Very much the theme of running multi-channel service. Consumers are even starting to use Instagram now to contact organizations. One retailer I know of takes something like 45% of its inbound contact by social. We've already seen that the phone channel isn't going away. It's remained very, very important to consumers. It is the service channel of last resort. Second thing is exploring video. Try the Renault ZE site when it comes to video chat. They've got a really interesting application there, which I think shows a bit of how people will use video chat in the future. Responding to fluctuating demand. Some call centers' busiest day is Monday, others it's Friday. It depends on what you're doing. Increasingly, it's global service where you can spread the load on a global basis if you're that type of organization and really help to address that fluctuating demand issue. I think supporting your agents with training and development, so through better call recordings, etc., with consumers writing to CEOs and posting repeatedly on social media. I think that whole issue of helping your agents to deal with these really sort of complicated and difficult queries is vital. And lastly, handling the regulatory data security and privacy issues, so that whole issue of PCI in particular and taking payments over the phone. So that's it, Jonty. That's all I had to present on the research, and so I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much for that. I think some quite fascinating insights, particularly the consumer insights then into consumer views of what they view as secure, and I think that's perhaps rather different from what we view as secure as contact center professionals. So quite interesting there. So we're just going to do some top tips and questions now. I'm joined also by Colin Westlake out in San Jose, who's been patiently waiting in the background there. So let's have just a reminder, if you've got a question, please use #question in the chat room, and it's callcenterhelper.com/chat, or #tip for a tip. So let's have a look at a couple of audience opinions a bit earlier on. Mark has said, we're looking at making the contact center 100% super agents, so that all agents can handle all queues. So that's multi-skilling their approach. And Mark has said super agents are particularly good for contact center when handling attrition. Certainly, Marcus, staff turnover is a challenge if you're trying to make the contact center more powerful.
It is always a challenge, and it always has been in the industry. I mean, but I also think it's interesting that some contact centers that can be located in very similar areas, physical areas, can have quite different attrition. So there are things that you can do, to keep the right people and not necessarily see too many going out the door.
So here's an interesting one that's come through from Danny. And Colin, if we could bring you in on this one. Danny's asked the question, does pause and resume on call recording make our call center PCS compliant? My guess would be probably yes, but what's your view, Colin?
Well, no, certainly not. you're leaving the agents in scope, which is a large part of the problem. And I think, as the research earlier showed, what people are more concerned about is actually the agent, not the call recording. So that's only part of the picture, I'm afraid.
Okay. So we've got 39% of our audience using pause and resume recording. So potentially we might have a bit of an issue there.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. Simon,
yeah, I mean, I think it's been sort of sold into the market as making you PCI compliant. It does make your call recordings compliant, but you've still got the whole of the rest of the call center environment: the agent's PC, the network, the agent themselves. So you've got to deal with the whole thing, not just one part of it, not just the call recording.
Yeah, I've certainly seen lots of contact centers that have gone paperless and have now a whiteboard, but I've heard some horror stories of one call center where the trainers the agents were writing card details down on the back of their trainers. And
well, again, it's only a partial solution, and not one that I've heard good reports from in terms of working atmosphere. Because if people need personal emails for their kids to get in touch if they're late from school or something, they can't have any personal contact. So it's a very, you really are locked down then.
Yeah, that's interesting. Right, let's take another one. Thito has said, can a training manager take on a dual role as a training and QA manager? How effective would this be for a contact center? So I don't know if we've got a few answers to this one have been kindly sent in by our audience. Jamie said, I've used both QA and training in one role previously, as it worked really well as it took the pressure off team leaders and allowed the staff to become more transparent during coaching. So we've got an audience answer to that one. And Bartos said the training and QA man should definitely be separate roles, but work closely together. And Emily said, I think the training manager should be a QA manager as well. Let's take one more question from the audience, from Dougie. Do customers really want video chat, or is this a desire driven by technical capability that strategists desire? What's your view on that one, Marcus? Do you think it's the latest fad, or
well, I don't think it is the latest fad, because I think, I mean, organizations, telecoms companies have been talking about video conferencing for 50 years, haven't they? But I think what we're seeing in society now is that more and more of the way that we consume information, that we're entertained, that even we communicate is through video. So I think we're reaching a point, and it doesn't happen incredibly quickly, but where people become more comfortable with the whole idea of using video. So whether it's FaceTime or whether it's Skype, I know lots of Skype calls are still made without video, but there is that just shift towards video, and I don't think we can deny that. And then I think it's a case of looking at your particular organization and saying, is video chat relevant for what we do? Do we need to show customers something? Do we need to look into the whites of their eyes? Is there a reason apart from video chat why it makes sense to use that technology with our customers?
Yeah, and indeed, when you've got to show people, it's particularly useful in a sales center, which ties in quite well for that. Well, we're just moving down the agenda, so we've now got Simon Beeching from Syntek, who will be sharing with us some of his ideas about how technology can help to make the contact center more powerful. So we'll just move the slides here across to Simon, and if you'd like to pop those up on your screen, and perhaps you'd let us nice image there. Perhaps you'd like to take us through your thoughts of how to make the contact center more powerful.
Okay, well, thanks very much for that introduction, Jonty, and for the research presentation there, Marcus. I thought I'd just lighten up the day a little bit by showing people a picture of a cute puppy. The old Andrex trick. But actually the reason for showing this is slightly more serious. This is my young daughter choosing a new puppy a couple of weeks ago, but what you may not have seen is what she's got in her hand. It's her iPhone. And what she's actually doing is she's FaceTiming her brother, who's at university, to bring him into the loop, to show him in real time what puppies there were, and so he could help choose which one, because he could see them all jumping around and so on. And I think I'd respond to Dougie's question there, is video just a fad? I mean, this is now the consumer of today is the FaceTime generation. People expect to be able to interact with each other anytime, anywhere, anyhow, and that's how they're living their personal lives. And increasingly, this is the consumer of today, and indeed increasingly our staff of today, our workforce of today. And if that's the way that technology is moving in our personal lives, you can bet that's the way the consumer of today and tomorrow is going to want to deal with us in terms of the way they interact with our organizations. So that really sort of gives an introduction to my theme, which is that anytime, anyhow, anywhere generation. And Syntek is very pleased to have sponsored this webinar, and indeed the Davis Hickman research you heard about earlier on. We've recently rebranded to just Syntek. We used to be called Syntek Telecom, and that's because we are all about integrated contact center systems, moving towards that multi-channel world that has been so highlighted in the presentation earlier. And at Syntek, we know all about how vital the contact center is to the whole business mix. It's the business center, as Marcus alluded to earlier on. Contact center managers and IT managers running them have a very difficult balancing act between all sorts of competing forces, from straightforward, almost opposites, worrying about sales versus customer service, all the quality monitoring that you need to do with surveys and call recording, measuring call outcomes, the cost per inquiry and sale metrics. You want to be able to integrate with your other systems to learn more about your customers and store information about them. And you've got to try and manage customer expectations and satisfaction, manage down your waiting times using IVR, trying to lower abandon rates, and you've got to worry about all these things all at once. And now multi-channel. You really have got to try and blend these together, and one of the difficulties is not having these in silos. You may have web chat, you may have emails, you may have calls, but they've all got to be dealt with in one place and preferably by the one agent.
Yeah, and it's been sort of one of those sort of kind of crept up on us sort of multi-channel, because we had the call center, then we put a bit of email, and we might have changed the name to contact center, and then we might just added a bit of social media on, and you could probably manage those in 3 different bits. But I think when you start adding other channels on top of that, like web chat, it starts to get a little bit more tricky to manage it in those silos.
I think that's where the tricky bit is making sure that if I was dealing with Anita by email in your contact center, I need to be able to deal with Anita on the phone when I ring up and follow up. So it's making sure it's all blended in, not just available to your product. And it might be in different sites. You need to be able to make sure that's blended in as well. Building on a theme that Marcus alluded to earlier on, you need to be able to manage the demand management. What times of day and night are people wanting to deal with you, and making sure you're staffed up accordingly to match that demand. And for all of that, you've got to have all the detailed reporting and analytics that goes with it. And if you're on top of all of those things, you then get thrown a curveball by the regulatory requirements of PCI DSS security for card payments. Now, the good news is that compared to the example that you opened up with earlier on, John T, about the company that was being hammered for its customer service at the moment, all of these different and challenging things can now be handled in the cloud with hosted systems and at telephony network level as an integrated platform. And cloud and hosted and network level systems, rather than legacy premise-based systems, are much faster to implement, more flexible and scalable, and there's no upfront cost. So it's definitely the way, as Marcus's research alluded to earlier, that the contact center managers and IT managers are now expecting to fix these issues in their contact centers of the future. So what are the benefits? Just to remind ourselves of some of the benefits of network level services in telephony and hosted remote managed services, which is my definition of what I mean by cloud in terms of this presentation. We have to remember from the pie chart that Marcus said earlier that whilst we've been talking about this for quite a while, and Call Center Helper, of course, knows all about it. You've got lots of people trying to sell these sorts of services. The reality is most people are stuck with legacy systems. Only 26% in our poll said that they currently use cloud services, but 60% think they're going to go that way next year. So it's worth reminding ourselves of some of the key benefits. And just one win for people listening, network level services, we can do call recording at network level. We can also do your call queuing at network level. If you queue your calls at network level, it means you don't have to have extra lines. Most contact centers have extra lines in order that your customers don't get a busy signal if all your agents are tied up. Now, that's very expensive. If you do your queuing at network level, then you've got an instant when you only have to have 1 line per seat. So there are cost benefits as well as service benefits. But the main thing, I think, is that the cloud-based systems really do allow you to deal with this anyone, anywhere generation, because cloud is web-based, it's ubiquitous, you can do it from anywhere that you are to anywhere they are, and I think that's the key thing about cloud services. It matches that new generation requirement of multi-channel. And also, of course, cost-wise and in terms of implementation, solutions tend to work with your existing systems and phones. It's software as a service. It's a managed service remotely, just like LinkedIn and Facebook are in terms of personal life. So are cloud services in your business life. They're remote served to you via the web. and therefore they're much quicker to install and no upfront costs, and therefore the costs are largely variable operating cost. It's not a capex upfront, a heavy fixed cost. And because such systems are by definition multi-tenanted, in other words lots of businesses and organizations using them at once, this is more cost efficient because it's outsourced and the ongoing development is managed for you and is kept up to date by all of the different customers' demands of that system, and you benefit from those ongoing developments rather than when you want something it goes into the queue with your beleaguered IT department who've got a 6-month waiting list already. Everything's being pushed along faster. And of course, if you can get an integrated telephony and software as a service suite, then you're not having to deal with lots of different vendors, lots of different suppliers to tie them all in together. So I want to concentrate really on 3 key software as a service cloud areas today. Call tracking analytics first, contact center management gains second, and secure card payment by phone. So looking at call tracking analytics, just a quick question for everybody, no poll here, but just have a think. Does your marketing department actually publish different telephone numbers to use in different ads or your channels, for instance, catalogs versus advertising? Time and time again we come across organizations who just have one single number to ring. That's the number to ring for our contact center. And then you try to get your agents to source code that call. Did you see an ad? Did you see us on Google? Why not, as a very simple start point, use different numbers for your different channels so you then instantly know where your calls are coming from?
I think we've kind of become almost, the one number strategy has become almost a bit tyrannical in terms of, like your instance of trying to dial into your local branch. I think, we've got perhaps a bit too hung up on the one number strategy.
It's just such an easy way of getting actual data on what's working in your marketing. You know instantly that that's someone seeing your ad, or someone's ringing from your website, or someone's ringing from catalog. So that's a quick tip. But we can take that to a much deeper level than that with call tracking and analytics. Just look at this picture here from a holiday website. This is Mr. Smith and Mrs. Jones looking at the same page on the same website at the same hotel on that website at the same moment. If you look at the orange ring there, they've got 2 different telephone numbers to ring. So dynamically for each person looking at that website with web-to-call analytics, that different telephone number, that each customer having a different telephone number dynamically changed for them, means you can pull through for that website visitor all the data that might otherwise be hidden to you, the source of that call. What did they look at? How did they get to the website? What have they been looking at on the website?
And is that difficult to implement? I mean, it seems like quite a simple idea. But I'd imagine that trying to get the IT department to put a different number in.
Well, going back to my point, I don't think you do that with legacy premise-based hardware. It'd be very difficult. This is a sophisticated service, dynamically done outside of your organization, via the web to your.
It's like a cloud service.
Absolutely, it allows you then to deliver real-time information to both marketing department who love that sort of data to help them optimize your marketing, but also it can be delivered to the call center agent in real time as the call comes through to help improve service and sales. It means that agents can actually see the caller's website behavior alongside, if you can tie in with your CRM system, what you've previously got on record about that customer as they come through. And to your point here, John T, it's web-based information, it's web-based reporting, there's nothing to install, it's completely web-delivered. So the agent can also even take that to the next level and see what the caller is looking at on your website using screen view and follow around on their screen what the customer is looking at in real time on their screen. So this is a sort of an example screenshot of something we dummied up for a client to show the sort of information they can have on screen for their agent as the call comes through. Again, this is a holiday company example. You can see here, and again, this is working through dynamic telephone number replacement, so a different telephone number for each visitor to your website. Bottom left, you can see that this caller made an organic search in Google for Malta holiday. It's tied in with the CRM system. You see he's made 2 previous calls and he's made a booking in the past through Anita. And you can see through the cloud words on the screen here, not only having searched for Malta, did he look for Malta holidays, he looked for Greece as well, but he's looked an awful lot at Egypt, and I happen to know from my past that Egypt holidays are more expensive than Malta, so I can upsell this guy to an Egypt holiday. I even know his budget by what he's been looking at. So that, I think, is probably a very powerful example of how modern web-based cloud technology can make the contact center much more of a service and sales focused business using the power of this sort of new technology. Now, going to cloud contact center management, the second of the points I wanted to touch on here. This is all about the virtual contact center solutions and performance management, web-based, that mean that you can have a live web-based dashboard and reporting interface, and it will support multi-channel, which is what the poll earlier said the listeners today want to see, and what Marcus's research said was the top theme out of the research. Mm-hmm. And it can support all of those calls in and out, web chat, SMS, email, social media. You should be looking for a dashboard that can integrate all of these things together and can link with telephone number recognition at the front, so you know who that caller is if they've called before, and your CRM system at the back, including allowing the agent to put in notes and outcomes from calls to feed into that CRM system. And all of those normal features you'd expect to run a contact center today can be handled with these cloud systems all in one integrated interface. I won't read the long list there, but I'm sure all the contact center managers listening will recognize all of the features they want. And you do, of course, with a cloud-based system, you get an instant win that because it's available anywhere via the web, if you do have disaster recovery needs, if you need to fail over, you can fail over instantaneously. You can divert to somewhere else, and all of that data and information is going to still be available at your fingertips, and you divert the calls, and you can stand out in the street using your mobile if you want. You'll still be able to fail over to that. So let me just take you to one further level, though. Going back to the tracking and analytics I showed earlier using our response track system, if you were to link that up to a cloud-based management system like Agent Call, and also internal database lookups like have they called you before and what have they bought from you before, you don't even need IVR anymore. You can dynamically and intelligently route calls as they come in straight to the right department. Just by recognizing the behavior of that customer on your website before. If they've looked for a Malta and Egypt holiday, put it straight through to the Eastern Mediterranean sales department without the customer even needing to press 1 to get through to that department. If you know they bought 2 things from you before, put that call to the front of the queue. So it takes you to a whole new level compared to IVR, which to most consumers is a pretty clunky way of having to find the right department. Intelligently route that call through to the right place. So just a couple of examples here on screen, screenshots of the new RealTime Dashboard on the right that we're just launching soon for our own customers, giving you real-time data, the sort of data you'd expect from old-fashioned ACD equipment and wallboards and so on, but it's there. And this can be on agents in all sorts of different places at the same time, whether they're home workers or in different sites or even pulling your outsourcer in as well. All integrated, all that data into one screen. And on the left-hand side, historical reporting down to the deepest granular level. So these are screenshots from our agent call system. And this gives you an example of the agent status screen showing what all the agents have been doing all day and what their status is now. And an exploded view a little bit further down there, if you can see the detail of an individual call clicked on there, you can see what that call was. You can even pull up the recording, listen to it and make notes in that recording for training purposes. So going back to that quality management that Marcus alluded to earlier on. So just to finish then on the third area that I said I'd talk about, and going back to one of those top areas of concern in the research that is coming through both contact center managers and consumers about card payment security. The best way to deal with this now, and pause and resume and clean rooming we said earlier on, are just partial solutions that were really came in 2 or 3 years ago when this whole thing first rose up. But now, I mean, I speak at payment card industry conferences as well, and certainly the consensus now is...
They're fascinating conferences.
For the people who go, they're fascinating. But if you're interested in the topic, then the consensus, certainly the last one I was at, was that de-scoping your contact center is what it's about, is making sure the card data never enters your call center at all. Yeah. And that's what consumers want, as Marcus said in the research. And the best way to do that is to use keypad payment by phone. And what happens there is that it's real time in conversation with the agent. The agent, there's no difference in the experience of the customer at all. They're chatting away with the call center agent, and she or he asks in the middle of the conversation, when it comes to asking for the long card number on the front of the card, instead of asking the customer to read it out, you ask them to enter it using the keypad of their phone. The same with the CV2, the security number, but other than that, everything else is the same. The customer experience is the same. The customers love it, is our feedback, because they know that that's more secure. They're not having to read out their card details to a stranger. And what that does is it protects your brand, it protects your reputation, it increases trust with the consumers. It is what they say they want in
So do you actually physically transfer the call, or is it actually done in?
Absolutely not. It's just in live in the middle of the conversation. There's no transferring it anywhere to an IVR or anything. It's real time in conversation with the agent. Okay, so you decided to buy the blue dress or that book.
Yeah.
Have you got your card ready? Yes, I have. What kind of card is it, please? Because we can check up on the type of card as well. Yeah. Just enter the long card number using the keypad on your phone.
And does the agent hear the tones?
The agent knows that the tones have been entered, but of course you can't hear the actual touch tones because you could derive the number from that. So we flatten the tones that are made in order that the agent can't derive them. The call recorder can't detect them either, but you do get full-length call recording. Yep. But you just can't hear the numbers as they're entered, and that means, especially if you're a financial services company where you have to have full-length call recording, then that satisfies that regulation as well. So at a stroke, you have de-scoped your call center because the card numbers never enter your call center environment at all.
And so if they're entering how do they know when the number's finished entering?
Because the agent can see on screen the 16 digits being entered, but not all of the numbers. So it's masked from them, so they know basically the customer is doing the 16-digit entry, but the screen, the virtual payment page for the agent is the same as it would have been otherwise. Just the customer entering those two critical bits of data that need to be kept secure, the long card number and the CV2. Other than that, it's exactly the same. There is also an automated IVR-based version, what we call AutoPay. So if you have balance payments or out-of-hours payments where the customer just wants to ring up and make a payment without an agent, you can handle that as well, and so that works in two different ways. And it is fully hosted, it's fully cloud-based, or it can be premise-based for larger enterprises if they don't want to use our telephony services as well. It can work with other telecom services. So that's touched on the three areas I wanted to sort of pull out from the research earlier on, and how our systems can deal with those, and how we're looking to deal with those in the future. And this is a screen showing our new products. As I mentioned earlier, we rebranded as Syntek Integrated Contact Center Systems, and these are the 4 product sets that we integrate together: our traditional telephony services, our cloud contact center management suite, keypad payment by phone, our Card Easy system, and our response tracking and analytics service. And these are all services developed and maintained and supported by Syntek. We're not a reseller. These are all our own. It's our own software, our own Ofcom regulated telephony services. Both for organisations, public sector, private sector businesses in the UK and indeed internationally. So if you're not already a client of ours, of course we'd love to speak to you. It's all on our newly rebranded website, syntek.co.uk. So the white papers that contain all of Marcus's research, they're available on the website, as are product brochures on all our services. There's a video demo of Card Easy, which is probably the best way to see it in action, John, to ask you questions so people can see how that works. We've got blogs and tips and newsletter sign up. Request a web demo from one of our sales guys and girls, or if you want to be old-fashioned, of course, you could still ring us up. So thank you very much for the opportunity to sponsor today's webinar, John T.
Wonderful, Simon. Thank you very much for that. And certainly it's opened my eyes on some of the card payment details there, because I must admit I had thought that Pause and Resume would make you PCI compliant, but it sounds like that's only partially compliant, which I guess is, if you're partially, that's
better than nothing as far as the card companies are concerned, but it's not the whole story.
Yeah, indeed. So let's just have a look at some of the top tips and questions. If you've got any other tips or questions, hashtag tip for a tip, hashtag question for a question. And we're going to go, and the first one that Bartaz has said, can credit card data ever be 100% safe in a call center? Colin, what's your take on that?
Well, the simple answer is no, and the best way around it is to make sure that the credit card data never arrives in the call center, as Simon was explaining. It's not necessarily the case that you are only worried about malicious agents. It's quite possible if a computer has been compromised within the call center, it has a virus, that virus is acting as a keystroke logger, so the agent is perfectly responsible and honest, but he's typing the card number into his CRM system or payment system, and meanwhile there's a malicious program which is recording those numbers and sending them off to Bulgaria or wherever. So the answer is No.
Okay, well, so know that you can get pretty close to meeting most people's needs. Okay, Angela's got a tip. Our technical team use web chat in order to support our customers with their technical questions about our products. This enables the technical team to demonstrate how to best put the products together where the customer's having issues. Marcus, I think web chat's a sort of big channel on the increase. Research I'd seen, about 35% of call centers currently have it.
Yes, and I think it's around sort of over the 30% mark of consumers that have now used it. I think the only thing I'd say with web chat is sometimes it can be the invisible channel, in that one moment you go to a website and it will pop up to you, or it's difficult to find through Contact Us, and I'd encourage organizations to follow this tip and make it more available, because I think it is a great way for consumers and for organizations to interact to help on difficult problems.
And Jamie said, we've had great success using live chat to monitor when customers land on our contact page to find our phone number. We then push a chat to them from one of our agents, nice and personal, not automated, to see if we can help online to save them during a potentially busy phone queue. It's been amazing the customer response we've had, which is another approach to doing it. It's tied in. Let's have a tip from Status. Status says, using screen view allows the call to be personalized and drives customer experience. It moves the agent away from being robotic. This also allows for cross-selling solutions. I'm not familiar with the screen view. Any ideas on this one?
It might be one of our users, actually, because our screen view facility allows them to see what the customer's looking at on the customer's looking at on the website.
Oh, like the one we had with the screen view with the Egypt on.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, good point. Good point on that one. Great. We've got a question from Theta also says, how do you ensure that you get customer feedback from all interaction channels without too many processes and systems? Have you got any thoughts on that, Colin?
Oh, that's a tricky one. That's really down to getting your systems designed properly so that you're managing your data, you're channeling it into a system which allows you to mine it effectively.
I guess without some form of multi-channel platform, it's the classic problem that most contact centers are wrestling with. You've got all these different systems together, and for any sort of consolidated view or consolidated reporting, it gets very difficult to put together a whole view on that one.
I think I've just add one point there. Remember, it is only one customer. They might be using lots of different channels, but you only have to ask the one customer one time through one of the channels, perhaps, what their satisfaction is.
Indeed. We've got a question that's come in from Danny, who said, can cloud-based contact center solutions provide all of the functionality offered by traditional premise-based systems? If I'd have gone back 4 years ago, I'd have probably said no. Marcus, what's your take on that? Do you think we're close there?
Well, I think it depends a lot on what you're trying to do as a contact center, and I think you can really only answer that question when you know exactly what that contact center is doing. But certainly, I think cloud-based systems are, continually getting better. That's where the energy in terms of investment and resources from the industry seems to be going. So I think, it is where we're seeing the biggest leaps.
And we've got a similar question that has come through from also from Dan. It says, does cloud mean that calls are routed via the internet? Colin?
No, absolutely not. It doesn't have to. It can do, but it's not necessarily the case. What we're basically talking about here are systems that are hosted. It doesn't mean to say that the telephony itself has to take a different route. So
no.
The major advantage is that the queue, if you like, is in the cloud, but the telephony channel doesn't have to be the internet. No, not at all.
Indeed, and you can get sort of cloud software that, for instance, does things like workforce management. So it's more the delivery mechanism. And Simon, you talked about cloud earlier. It's also typically, as well as being the delivery mechanism, cloud tends to be a sort of different payment mechanism as well.
Well, in terms of the billing, yes. I mean, legacy systems, premise-based systems, the normal issue is the FD, the finance director, having to sign off on a big upfront capital expenditure, and then there's maintenance charges. With cloud services, it's normally charged on a typically per agent per month basis.
Indeed. And Emily says, if you move to more video-focused calls, won't this raise image and brand issues? Marcus, you got a take on that?
I think it will, and I think that links back to the point that I've forgotten who made it earlier about super agents, and also the need to sort of think about the environment, the appearance, etc. There's so much to think about, but I think it's the way people are progressively moving.
Indeed. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. So in one or two words, if you'd like to say, what did you like best about today's webinar? If you'd like to type that into the chat room, what did you like best about today's webinar? Just a reminder that all of the slides are going to be available on our website later on today. That's at callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. You can also get a white paper will be sent to you by Syntek, which you can also get off the Syntek website. And if you want to watch the replay of the webinar, that's on the same link as you've dialed in to today. We'll send out a reminder of that. I know a lot of you do like to share these with your team and with your management team for all the information that's contained within it. And just like to say thank you to our three presenters. Marcus, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonty.
Speaking. Simon, thank you for speaking with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you,
and Colin, thank you for dialing in from San Jose so early in the morning. Real dedication there. Thank you very much, and thank you to all of the audience for joining today. We're not going to be having a webinar next week. Next one is 2 weeks' time, and we'll see you for the last of our autumn series. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.